Hello and welcome to the All Aboard Game Train USA tutorial. This game was made exclusively for Game Train USA in Highlands Ranch, Colorado. The first thing you want to do to get the game set up when you take the cards out of the box is separate them. You want your passenger cards, your All Aboard cards, and your departure cards separated. You should only have 4 departure cards, and even though they say All Aboard on them, they look more like passenger cards, and they say departure in the middle. The next thing that you're going to do is set up the station, which means you're going to take all of your All Aboard cards and you're going to find one in each direction with the 1 victory point on the corner. So when your station is set up, you should have a 1-point train of each direction set up, ready for departure. You'll then shuffle the rest of the departure cards and place them next to that line of departing trains. You'll then shuffle your 2-sided passenger deck. You'll then deal each player 3 passenger cards. If you're playing with less than 6 players, you could increase the hand size by 1 per player less than 6. Although, in your first game, I suggest sticking with 3 passenger cards per player and a 3-card hand size, before increasing the hand size and making things more chaotic. Then you'll take the rest of the passenger deck and split it roughly in half. It doesn't need to be exact. Then you'll take half of the deck and put those departure cards in with that half of the deck. And shuffle that half of the deck and place it next to the All Aboard cards. You'll then take the second half of the deck and place this on top. This allows half of the deck roughly to be played before the All Aboard cards start triggering at the beginning of the game. Now, later in the game, you may have to reshuffle the discard pile to make a new passenger deck. Don't worry about splitting the deck and putting the All Aboard cards at the bottom in later shuffles. You can just shuffle the whole discard into there. Then each player picks up the hand that they were dealt. Notice, I picked them up from the table. What I see is what I get. Remember that, because that is how most of this game works. When you steal cards, what you see is what you get. So, the backs of the cards are not visible to me, and those are not playable by me. Then fan out your cards so that at least one corner is visible by all other players, and you're ready to start All Aboard Game Train USA. So the objective of the game is to claim victory points by these trains leaving the station. The number of victory points required to win depends on the number of players. The trains are claimable when an All Aboard happens, and we'll talk about the All Aboard phase later during gameplay. But just know that when an All Aboard happens, you're going to flip the top card of the All Aboard deck, and then look at which train is departing and move that up. So that 1-point train is going to be replaced by this 1-point train, and now we enter an All Aboard phase, where players can take the lines of passengers that they have, add to them, but from cards in their hand, and the player who has the most value of passengers going southbound will win this victory point. Let's go over the passenger cards for a second. You may be looking at these passenger cards and thinking, wow, that's a lot of symbols on them. The reason that there are symbols in all 4 corners is so that the player knows what that face has on it, no matter how those cards are arranged in their other player's hand. As long as they can see one corner, they can see everything about the face of that card. So you really can ignore 3/4 of those icons. So you'll notice, we're looking at this one, this top part of the card is westbound 4, or the bottom part is wild 1. And if I flip that around, you'll see that the top part of this card is a wild 1 or a westbound 4. And when you're playing cards, you can play them in either orientation, as long as you're only playing the side that you see. You'll also notice that the cards have 2 sides. One side is for me to play from my hand. The other side is for other players to see what they could steal away from me. Again, what you see is what you get. So if someone stole this card, they would play this side, not the side I can see. So let's start talking about playing a turn. And on your turn, there are 2 phases. First, the draw, steal, or flip phase. So you get to choose to draw, steal, or flip one card. So you can draw the top card of the deck. Again, what you see is what you get, so what you can see on top of the deck is what you would put into your hand. You could steal a card, and for the sake of this tutorial, we'll just say that this is what is facing me, and the backside, or what's face down, is what is in my opponent's hand. So I could steal one of these cards. And again, what you see is what you get. So when you pull it, it goes into your hand, and you're looking at that side. This is the side that they would have been seeing in their hand. The third option in that first phase is flip. So I could choose one of my own cards and just flip it around. So that is the draw, steal, or flip phase. The second phase of your turn is to play a card. What you're trying to do is create lines of passengers waiting for these departing trains. On your cards, you have two options. Whichever one is facing the middle or face up to you is the side of the card that you're playing. So in this case, I'm going to play a westbound 4-passenger starting my westbound line, meaning that I now have four points or 4 value of passengers to try and claim this train if an all aboard comes. Then finally, at the end of the turn, you draw back up to your hand size, which the default hand size is 3. So let's talk about the all aboard phase. I've got it set up after we've played a few turns, and I'll talk about where we are in the game, and then we'll trigger that all aboard and I'll show you how that works. So you can see that I have some eastbound and some westbound passengers. I have 2 lines of passengers waiting to get on a train. My eastbound has an east 1 and an east 2, meaning that I have a total of 3 value. My westbound has a westbound 4 and a westbound 1, meaning I have 5 value. Now, my opponent has passengers lined up for every train. They have northbound 4, an east 6 with a wild 3, meaning their eastbound is a 9. Their southbound is a 4, their westbound is a 2. So they've kind of covered some bases in their planning to see no matter what flips, they have at least some passengers waiting in line. So the way all aboard is triggered is one of 2 things. One, at any point that the departure card is revealed at the top of the passenger deck, so at the end of my turn as I draw back up to 3 cards, it revealed all aboard. We now go into an all aboard phase. Gameplay stops and we resolve the all aboard before we continue. So what that means is you flip that all aboard and you'll notice that southbound is going to depart. I have no lines of passengers going south, but that doesn't mean I can't win that. And I'll show you how this works. So the player to the left of the person who triggered the all aboard now gets to play as many cards from their hand as they want that match that southbound departing train. My opponent already has a passenger worth 4, but they don't know if that's enough to win it. So they're going to play another 3 so that they have a southbound 7. If there were more than 2 players, it would continue around the table until the person who triggered it has the opportunity to play the last cards. So I'm going to play a wild 6 as southbound and a wild 4 as southbound. With a southbound total of 10, I am able to claim this card. Now, before we move that card over, everyone with any southbound passengers puts them in the discard pile. They have got on the train and left. Then you move this over, and then play resumes. Note, I have 1 card, and it was the end of my turn that triggered the all aboard. The common question is, well, you drew up to 3 and then you triggered the all aboard, so you did draw up to 3. However, my turn's not over yet. My turn is not over until I have replenished my hand to the hand size. Play continues until the next all aboard is triggered. So let's talk about the second way an all aboard can be triggered, and that is if someone plays a conductor. Now, when someone plays a conductor, they don't put it into a line. In this crazy station, we don't know which train is leaving. This conductor just shows up to work and figures out which train he should take and move along. So we're going to flip the top card, and it looks like the northbound train is leaving. So since I have this conductor, that conductor is worth 3 in my northbound train. Then we're going to resolve the all aboard just like normal. The conductor calls the all aboard, and the person to the left then can play as many cards going north, in this case, as they wish. Our opponent has north 4, I currently have a north 7. And it just so happens all 3 of their cards have a north. So they have 12 value of passengers getting on this northbound train. And you'll notice this is worth 3 points. So they're going to throw their whole hand in to try and get these 3 points. So it's 12 to 7, and then I'm going to play a northbound 5. You'll notice that we're now tied. I had 7 plus 5 is 12. They had 4 and added 8, also making 12. So we're tied. How do we resolve that? And the way you break that tie is, firstly, who has the most valuable passenger? So, since I have a 5 value northbound passenger, I would win that departing train card. Again, all northbound passengers get on that train and go to the discard pile. Now, if it is still tied, you would then look at who has the highest number of cards. If all tied players have the same value of highest value passenger and the same number, then nobody wins. That goes to the discard, all passengers go to the discard, and you then just resume play. In a 2 or a 3 player game, the first player to get 9 victory points wins the game. In a 4 or a 5 player game, 7 points will win you the game. And in a 6 player game, you only need 5 to win. And lastly, let's talk about the special cards, which liven up the game and do some special things. So the first type of special card is the Wild Wanderers. And you'll notice that they have an asterisk, denoting that those are wild. They can be played to any line. In this example, we've got a Wild 1 and a Wild 3, which could be played at any line going anywhere. These Wild Wanderers don't care which train they get on, they just want to go somewhere. So the next special type of card is the Wrong Train card. And this can be played as an interrupt on someone else's turn whenever they play a passenger to a line. So let's say I played this passenger to my eastbound line. My opponent plays Wrong Train, and I have to flip that card over and put it in a different line, which that actually worked in my favor. I would then place this westbound 4 on my westbound line. Note, if you flip the card over and there is an interrupt on that other card, you cannot play the interrupt. You have to only play the passenger to a line. So the interrupt would basically force you with only one option once you flip the card over. The next special card is the Missed Train card. This is also an interrupt and can be played when anybody plays a passenger to one of their lines. You can play Missed Train and that card is then discarded. The next special card, and the last interrupt, is the My Card Is Mine card. The way this works is if someone steals one of your cards on their turn, you can interrupt by saying, my card is mine. Let's say they took this card. Now, when you play the My Card Is Mine card to interrupt it, you then take that card back and you can play any part of that card. The side they can see, the side you can see, as long as it's not another interrupt. So instead of my opponent playing this card, I get to take it instead, look at both sides, and then decide where I want to put that card. It is worth noting that when you play interrupts, you do not draw more cards until the end of your turn. So you might be left with 1 or even 0 cards when an all aboard is triggered, leaving you no options to add to your lines to claim victory points. And lastly, the other special card is the Conductor, which we explained in the All Aboard section of the rules. And that is how to play All Aboard Game Train USA.